Today we speak about when representation stopped rotating, citizens to career politicians.
Logging pod starts like a conversation. Cup of coffee with no destination. Just voices trying to understand what's happening across this land. From your stories told to the pages turned. Every question, every word, supported by SheShareStudios.net.
Hello and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. In the earliest days of the United States, serving in Congress was not meant to look the way it does today. The Constitution created the structure, but it didn't spell out how long someone should actually stay. Members of the House would serve about 2 years terms. Senators, 6 years terms, and that was it. No term limits, no retirement age, no rule telling someone when to stop or set aside. On paper, it leaves the door wide open, but the structure itself tells a different story. If you look at how it was designed, especially those short 2-year House terms, it suggests something very different from a long or a lifelong career. The expectation was accountability. Serve, go home, live under the laws you helped create. And if your community still trusted you, maybe you'd return. Early lawmakers were not full-time politicians in the modern sense. They were farmers, lawyers, merchants, and local leaders who stepped into government for a period of time and then stepped back out. There was no infrastructure supporting a permanent political class, no large fundraising networks, no media cycles building national recognition. That mindset did not come out of nowhere. The founders were reacting directly to what they had just broken away from, a system in England where power could sit with the same people for generations. Figures like James Madison and Thomas Jefferson wrote the importance of preventing concentrated long-term control. They did not write term limits into the Constitution, but they built a system that leaned toward rotation. This was not written as a temporary service, but it was built to behave that way. And this is where the comparison comes in that makes it easier to understand. It is not exactly like this, but it is similar to jury duty because jury service is mandatory and random, while serving in Congress is elected and voluntary. But the spirit overlaps. The idea was that ordinary citizens would step in, serve their role, and then return to their lives. Public office was not supposed to replace your life. It was supposed to interrupt it. For a long time, there is more or less how things function. Turnover was higher, careers were shorter, and the role didn't come with the same kind of long-term power structure we see now. But as the country grew, the government expanded, and the responsibilities of Congress became more complex. Something began to shift. By the early mid-1900s, experience inside government started to matter more. Committees gained influence, especially during periods like the New Deal and the Cold War. And lawmakers who stayed longer began to accumulate more knowledge and more authority. Still, that was only the beginning. The real turning point came between 1970 and the 1990s. And this is where the answer to a major question becomes important. There was no single law passed that suddenly turned politicians into lifelong office holders. There was no moment when Congress voted to allow people to stay indefinitely. Instead, the system changed around them. Campaigns became dramatically more expensive. Fundraising became a constant necessity rather than an occasional task. Media exposure increased, name recognition, and with that came an advantage for anyone already in office. At the same time, seniority became tied directly to power. The longer someone stayed, the more influence they had over legislation, committees, and national priorities. So instead of a law saying you should stay, the system started sending a different message. If you leave, you lose everything you've built: the connections, the influence, the control over policy. It all resets. And if someone just entering Congress, that power immediately available and takes years, sometimes decades to accumulate. That brings us to what people see today. You have lawmakers serving for decades, sometimes into their late 70s or 80s. Like, for one instance, Susan Collins and many others across both chambers. What looks like a personal decision to stay is also tied to a structure that rewards stay. Power increases with time. There is no mandatory retirement. Incumbents have a strong advantage in elections, often winning re elections at a very high rate. Fundraiser networks, once built, sustain themselves. And over time, the role can shift from being a temporary service to become a central identity. So the system does not force people to stay, but it strongly encourages them not to leave. And that creates tension worth thinking about. The Constitution itself has not changed in this area. The rules are the same. There are still no term limits for Congress written in the founding document. But the outcome looks very different from what the structure originally suggested. A system that was built to rotate power now often holds it in place. A role that was expected to be temporary now frequently becomes long term. And that leaves a question sitting quietly underneath all of it. If the rules never change, but the results did, then what actually changed? The law or the incentives? Today's sources come from historical information on congressional service, U.S. Congress, on the House of Representatives and Senate's Library of Congress, length of congressional service, CRS reports, incumbents' advantage in Congress, Center for Responsive Politics, why members of Congress stay longer, Brookings. Thank you for listening. Until next time, bye bye for now.